I've been working on this DR in the garage for weeks, and now the adventure build is almost completed. I've been itching to take it out for a proper test ride, because this is my very first carbureted motorcycle, this is my very first dual sport, and it has the highest mileage of any bikes I ever owned. So my expectations were through the roof. I was both excited and nervous about how it would perform. Would this old rusty bone handle the rough off-road terrain? Would the engine explode on the highway? Or worse, would I end up stranded in the middle of nowhere if some things failed? Thankfully, none of that happened. The only failure of the day? Just my riding skill. And I'll tell you all about it in this first ride video. Surprisingly, the DR handled the highway like a champ. Even with a 15:45 sprocket ratio, it managed 110k with a little room left on the throttle. It kept up with the traffic without any issue. I did struggle with the wind, but that's to be expected with any lightweight motorcycle on the highway. I could definitely feel the old single-cylinder engine working hard on the uphill stretch at 80k. It pushed through just fine. After meeting up with my riding buddies, we headed into the bush. The road we chose was the Glenchy Road, starting from Little Holly at Blue Mountain, cutting through the Cox River Valley and 6-foot track, then riding through the Genolan State Forest. I've ridden my Swampland 401 on this part of the road a few months earlier, and it was pretty easy. Today, I thought we could just finally complete the loop and also having a good time. Weather was beautiful, the scenery was gorgeous. There's nothing better for the eye than riding through a farmland on an easy dirt road with a herd of cattle scattered on the hill. The DR performed incredibly well. Although the 21-inch front wheel felt strange and unpredictable at first, I quickly got used to it and started to enjoy the ride. It had recently rained, so the gravel road was firm and compact, with no dust at all. Thanks to the upgraded suspension and high ground clearance, the trail riding was much easier than when I was on the Swampland. There were a few sections with bumps and ruts from the weather, along with steep downhill and some ugly corrugation, but I navigated through them easily, and the bike handled like a dream. My confidence was greatly boosted, and I was in my off-road riding happy place. Well, some of my buddies had a bit of trouble with the river crossing, so I helped out. The next section of the road gets trickier. It was the lowest point of the valley, close to the river, and it became quite muddy.
Fuck me.
Then we come to the most challenging river crossing yet. The recent rain had made the river deeper, and there were large rocks on the riverbed, with little river crossing experience. After a very short hesitation, we decided to go for it, which proved to be our first mistake. The first rider on his Honda CRF walked it through, but I decided to keep my boots dry and ride across while standing up, which is my second mistake. So what happened was I hit a few rocks that threw off my balance, and as I dropped onto the seat, my hand accidentally twisted the throttle too much, launching the bike into a tree. Well, it did get me across the river with dry boots. The bike got stuck between rocks, and my shoulder hit the tree very hard. Surprisingly, the bike was undamaged, but my shoulder starting to hurt. I couldn't lift my arm, and I worried it might be something serious. The bike stood there like nothing happened, while I sat regretting my bad decisions with a likely broken arm. While I rested, others helped push my bike out from its awkward spot. The river claimed another victim too. One of another DR rider dropped his bike twice and drowned the engine. Water got into the engine oil and he couldn't get the bike started. We have to leave it behind, and he rode 2 up for the rest of the trip. We finally got everyone through the river, but the challenge didn't stop. The next section was slippery with hidden rocks under the surface. We made it through, only to face another river crossing. After the last attempt, we were all a bit scarred, and I was feeling desperate. My arm was killing me, and I could barely control the handlebars. I wasn't sure if I could make it through without another fall. After team hike across the river, I set off, praying I don't hit anything. It was a close call. I nearly lost my rear wheel in the slippery mud, but somehow I made it through. Luckily, the worst was behind us. The rest of the trail was mostly dirt road with loose rocks and uphill.
It makes it so much easier if I can stand up, but I can't now.
It could have been easy and enjoyable if I could stand up, but with my injured arm, I just couldn't. I was in pain, exhausted, and just want this to end. The DR carried me through it all, like a trusty old workhorse that knows the way home. It glided over the rough sections without complaint. The suspension worked beautifully, with little vibration from the seat and the handlebars. I couldn't ride fast, just in the first gear and the lower RPM, but the old DR tracted up the steep hill without even missing a bit. It's easy to bond with a bike after an adventure trip, especially when it's as eventful as this one. I was overly confident in my riding skill and made bad decisions, but the trusty DR carried me through. No judgment, no complaint. It performed well when I was fast and rode comfortably when I was hurt and slow. It took me on an adventure and brought me home at the end of the day. It was a hell of a first test ride, but by the end, I'd truly fall in love with this bike. I was fascinated by how DR650 stayed in production for over 30 years with almost no updates, continues to have such a devoted following. Now I finally understand why it is so beloved around the world and why so many people feel so attached to it. And now I am one of them.